The pastor asked if anyone in the congregation would like to express praise for answered prayers. Susie Smith stood and walked to the podium. She said, "I have a praise. 2 months ago, my husband Phil had a terrible bicycle wreck, and his scrotum was completely crushed. The pain was excruciating, and the doctors didn't know if they could help him." You could hear a muffled gasp from the men in the congregation as they imagined the pain that poor Phil must have experienced. "Phil was unable to hold me or the children," she went on, "and every move caused him terrible pain. We prayed as the doctors performed a delicate operation, and it turned out they were able to piece together the crushed remnants of Phil's scrotum and wrap wire around it to hold it in place." Again, the men in the congregation cringed and squirmed uncomfortably as they imagined the horrible surgery performed on Phil. "Now," she announced in a quivering voice, "thank the Lord, Phil is out of the hospital, and the doctors say that with time, his scrotum should recover completely." All the men sighed with unified relief. The pastor rose and tentatively asked if anyone else had something to say. A man stood up and walked slowly to the podium. He said, "I'm Phil." The entire congregation held its breath. "I just want to tell my wife the word is sternum." A lady goes on holiday to Barbados. Upon arriving, she meets a black man, and after a night of passionate lovemaking, she asks him, "What is your name?" "I can't tell you," the black man says. Every night they meet, and every night she asks him again what his name is, and he always responds the same. He can't tell her. On her last night there, she asks again, "Can you please tell me your name?" "I can't tell you my name because you will laugh at me," says the black man. "There is no reason for me to laugh at you," the lady says. "Okay, my name is Snow," the black man replies, and the lady bursts into laughter. The black man gets mad and says, "I knew you would make fun of it." The lady replied, "I'm not making fun of your name. I'm thinking of my husband back home, who won't believe me when I tell him I had 8 inches of snow every day in Barbados." Chris and Stephen, who were in their 80s and both widowers, were guests at the wedding of the granddaughter of one of their mates from the retirement home. This lively and very pretty girl and her new husband had quite openly lived together for more than 3 years before their nuptials. Chris, an old curmudgeon if ever there was one, grumbled to his mate, "The moral standards of young people today are just disgraceful. Why, I didn't even sleep with my wife before our marriage, let alone live in sin with her." "Oh," said Steve, "is that so?" "Yes," said Chris. "What about you?" "I'm not sure, really. What was her maiden name?" A wise old gentleman retired and purchased a modest home near a junior high school. He spent the first few weeks of his retirement in peace and contentment. Then a new school year began. The very next afternoon, 3 young boys, full of youthful after-school enthusiasm, came down his street, beating merrily on every trash can they encountered. The crashing percussion continued day after day, until finally the wise old man decided it was time to take some action. The next afternoon, he walked out to meet the young percussionists as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, "You kids are a lot of fun. I like to see you express your exuberance like that. In fact, I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Will you do me a favor? I'll give you each $1 if you'll promise to come around every day and do your thing." The kids were elated and continued to do a bang-up job on the trash cans. After a few days, the old-timer greeted the kids again, but this time he had a sad smile on his face. "This recession's really putting a big dent in my income," he told them. "From now on, I'll only be able to pay you 50 cents to beat on the cans." The noisemakers were obviously displeased, but they did accept his offer and continued their afternoon ruckus. A few days later, the wily retiree approached them again as they drummed their way down the street. "Look," he said, "I haven't received my Social Security check yet, so I'm not going to be able to give you more than 25 cents. Will that be okay?" "A lousy quarter?" the drum leader exclaimed. "If you think we're going to waste our time beating these cans around for a quarter, you're nuts. No way, mister. We quit." And the old man enjoyed peace. A man wakes up in the hospital, bandaged from head to foot. The doctor comes in and says, "Ah, I see you've regained consciousness. Now, you probably won't remember, but you were in a pileup on the freeway. You're going to be okay. You'll walk again and everything, but something happened. I'm trying to break this gently, but the fact is, your willy was chopped off in the wreck, and we were unable to find it." The man groans, but the doctor goes on, "You've got $9,000 in insurance compensation coming to you, and we have the technology now to build you a new willy that will work as well as your old one did. Better, in fact. But the thing is, it doesn't come cheap. It's $1,000 an inch." The man perks up at this. "So," says the doctor, "it's for you to decide how many inches you want, but it's something you'd better discuss with your wife. I mean, if you had a 5-inch one before and you decide to go for a 9-incher, she might be a bit put out. But if you had a 9-incher one before and you decide only to invest in a 5-incher this time, she might be disappointed. So it's important that she plays a role in helping you make the decision." The man agrees to talk with his wife. The doctor comes back the next day. "So," says the doctor, "have you spoken with your wife?" "I have," says the man. "And has she helped you in making the decision?" asked the doctor. "She has," says the man. "And what is it?" asks the doctor. "We're getting a new kitchen." 3 men died on Christmas Eve and were met by St. Peter at the pearly gates. "In honor of this holy season," St. Peter said, "you must each possess something that symbolizes Christmas to get into heaven." The first man fumbled through his pockets and pulled out a lighter. He flicked it on. "It represents a candle," he said. "You may pass through the pearly gates," St. Peter said. The second man reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. He shook them and said, "They're bells." St. Peter said, "You may pass through the pearly gates." The third man started searching desperately through his pockets and finally pulled out a pair of women's panties. St. Peter looked at the man with a raised eyebrow and asked, "And just what did those symbolize?" The man replied, "These are carols." Ole and Sven were returning to New York after a visit to Europe. They were enjoying a nice, relaxing flight when the captain's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Folks, I just wanted to inform you that one of the engines has quit. There is no danger whatsoever, as the 747 can easily fly on 3 engines, but we will be 1 hour late into New York." About half hour later, the captain announced, "Folks, we've lost a 2nd engine. We are still safe, but we will be 2 hours late into New York." About half hour later, the captain came back on the loudspeaker. "Folks, I don't know what's going on, but we've lost a 3rd engine. Don't panic. The 747 has been designed to fly safely on only 1 engine, but we will be 3 hours late into New York." At this point, Ole looked at Sven and said, "You know, Sven, if that last engine goes out, we could be up here all night." I went fishing one morning, but after a short time, I ran out of prawns. Then I saw a red-bellied black snake with a frog in his mouth. Frogs are good bear-bait. Knowing the snake couldn't bite me with the frog in his mouth, I grabbed him right behind the head, took the frog, and put it in my bait bucket. Now the problem was how to release the snake without getting bitten, so I grabbed my bottle of Jack Daniels and poured a little whiskey in its mouth. His eyes rolled back and he went limp. I released him into the lake without incident and carried on fishing using the frog. A little later, I felt a nudge on my foot. It was that bloody snake with 2 more frogs. A truck driver stopped at a roadside diner for lunch. He ordered a cheeseburger, coffee, and steak sandwich. Just as he was about to eat, 3 big, hairy bikers stomped in. The huge biker grabbed the trucker's cheeseburger and took a huge bite. The second one picked the coffee and chugged it in one gulp. The third monster biker sat down and ate the steak sandwich. The truck driver didn't say any word and simply paid his bill and walked out. The first biker laughed and said to the waitress, "That guy's not much of a man, is he?" "Well, he's not much of a driver either. He just backed his 8-wheeler over those 3 motorbikes outside." One evening, an avid bird watcher stood in his backyard and heard an owl hoot. So he thought he'd give a hoot back. To his surprise and delight, the bird hooted again. The next night, the same scenario occurred. All summer, the man and his feathered friend hooted back and forth. He even kept a log of the conversations. Just as he thought he was on the verge of a breakthrough in interspecies communication, his wife had a chat with her next-door neighbor. "My husband spends his nights calling to owls," the wife commented. "That's odd," the neighbor replied. "So does my husband." A group of Boeing employees are sitting on a plane getting ready for takeoff. The pilot comes on over the intercom and says, "Folks, we're pleased to have you flying with us on our brand new 737, fresh from our good friends at Boeing." Immediately, the Boeing employees all scramble to get out of their seats and off the plane as quickly as possible. It's utter pandemonium in the aisles as everyone starts to panic. Everyone, that is, except for one old man, who remains sitting in his seat, quiet and unbothered. A junior executive looks at the old man and says, "Didn't you hear the announcement? If we don't get off now, this plane might fall apart mid-air." The old man says, "Sir, I've been an engineer at Boeing for over 30 years. I've been there through all of the ups and downs, the cost-cutting and outsourcing, the bad times and the good. And if I know how this company operates today, I can say with absolute certainty there's no chance this plane will even leave the ground." A blind man walks into a restaurant and takes a seat. The owner, who's also the waiter, hands him a menu. The man kindly says, "I'm blind, sir. I can't read the menu. Just bring me a used fork from another table and I'll figure it out." Confused but curious, the owner brings over a fork from the pile of dirty dishes. The blind man sniffs it and says, "Perfect. I'll have the meatloaf with mashed potatoes." The owner is stunned and rushes to tell his wife, who does the cooking. A few days later, the blind man returns. Once again, the owner hands him a menu out of habit. The man gently reminds him, "Remember me, I'm the blind man." Realizing his mistake, the owner fetches another used fork. After a quick sniff, the man confidently orders, "Ah, that smells good. Macaroni and cheese with broccoli." Still baffled, the owner plans a little test. The next week, when the blind man walks in, the owner hurries to the kitchen and tells his wife, "Hey, Mary, rub this fork on your underwear before I take it to him." Mary, though puzzled, goes along with the prank. When the blind man sniffs the fork, he pauses and then grins. "I didn't know Mary worked here." 2 women friends had gone out for a girls' night out and had been over-enthusiastic on the cocktails. Incredibly drunk and walking home, they suddenly realized they both needed to pee. They were very close to a graveyard, and one of them suggested they do their business behind a headstone or something. The first woman had nothing to wipe with, so she took off her panties, used them, and threw them away. Her friend, however, was wearing an expensive underwear set and didn't want to ruin hers, but was lucky enough to salvage a large ribbon from a wreath that was on a grave and proceeded to wipe herself with it. After finishing, they made their way home. The next day, the first woman's husband phones the other husband and says, "These girls' nights out have got to stop. My wife came home last night without her panties."
"That's nothing," said the other. "Mine came back with a sympathy card stuck between the cheeks of her backside that said, 'From all of us at the fire station, we'll never forget you.'"
One Sunday, a pastor told the congregation that the church needed some extra money and asked the people to prayerfully consider giving a little extra in the offering plate. He said that whoever gave the most would be able to pick out 3 hymns. After the offering plates were passed, the pastor glanced down and noticed that someone had placed a $1,000 bill in the offering. He was so excited that he immediately shared his joy with his congregation and said he'd like to personally thank the person who placed the money in the plate. A very quiet, elderly, saintly lady all the way in the back shyly raised her hand. The pastor asked her to come to the front. Slowly, she made her way to the pastor. He told her how wonderful it was that she gave so much, and in thanksgiving asked her to pick out 3 hymns. Her eyes brightened as she looked over the congregation, pointed to the 3 handsomest men in the building, and said, "I'll take him, and him, and him." A mother is driving her little girl to her friend's house for a play date. "Mommy," the little girl asks, "how old are you?" "Honey, you are not supposed to ask a lady her age," the mother replied. "It's not polite." "Okay," the little girl says. "How much do you weigh?" "Now really," the mother says, "those are personal questions and are really none of your business." Undaunted, the little girl asks, "Why did you and Daddy get a divorce?" "That's enough questions, young lady, honestly." The exasperated mother walks away as the 2 friends begin to play. "My mom won't tell me anything about her," the little girl says to her friend. "Well," says the friend, "all you need to do is look at her driver's license. It's like a report card. It has everything on it." Later that night, the little girl says to her mother, "I know how old you are. You are 32. The mother is surprised and asks, "How did you find that out?" "I also know that you weigh 130 pounds. The mother is past surprised and shocked now. "How in heaven's name did you find that out?" "And," the little girl says triumphantly, "I know why you and Daddy got a divorce." "Oh, really?" the mother asks. "Why?" "Because you got an F in s***." Murphy walked into church one Sunday, and the priest almost dropped his Bible. Murphy had never been to Mass before. After the service, the priest caught up with him. "Murphy, it's wonderful to see you here. What brought you today?" Murphy scratched his head and said, "Well, Father, I've got to be honest. A while back, I lost my favorite hat. I knew McGlynn had the same one, and I figured since he comes every Sunday, he'd leave it in the back during Mass. I was planning to wait until everyone left and take his hat." The priest's eyes widened. "And you didn't?" Murphy smiled. "No, Father. After your sermon on the 10 Commandments, I thought maybe I shouldn't." The priest beamed. "So you gave up stealing the hat because of your faith?" Murphy shook his head slowly. "Nope, Father. When you talked about thou shalt not commit adultery, I remembered exactly where I left mine." A young doctor has moved out to a small community to replace a doctor who is retiring. The older doctor urges the younger doctor to accompany him in his rounds, so the people in town can meet the new younger doctor. At the first house that they visited, the woman complained about her stomach pain. The older doctor said, "Because you eat too much fruit. Just 1 or 2 portions is enough for a day." After they left, the younger doctor said, "You didn't examine the woman. How come you got the diagnosis so quickly?" "I didn't have to. Haven't you noticed that I dropped my stethoscope over there? When I bent to pick it up, I saw a half-dozen banana peels in the trash can. That must be the cause of her stomach pain." "Huh?" the younger doctor said. "Pretty clever. I think I will do the same on our next patient." When they arrived at the next house, they spent several minutes talking to a woman. She complained that she's always exhausted and feeling down lately. "You've probably been doing too much work for the church," the younger doctor told her. "Maybe you should take it easy and see if that will make you feel better." As they were leaving, the older doctor said, "I know that woman well. Your diagnosis is almost certainly correct, but how did you arrive at that?" "I did what you did. I dropped my stethoscope, and when I bent down to pick it up, I noticed the preacher under the bed." 3 Texas plastic surgeons were playing golf together and discussing surgeries they had performed. One of them said, "I'm the best plastic surgeon in Texas. A concert pianist lost 7 fingers in an accident. I reattached them, and 8 months later he performed a private concert for the Queen of England." One of the others said, "That's nothing. A young man lost both arms and legs in an accident. I reattached them, and 2 years later he won a gold medal in 5 field events in the Olympics." The third surgeon said, "You guys are amateurs. Several years ago, a cowboy who was high on cocaine and alcohol rode a horse head-on into a train traveling 80 miles an hour. All I had left to work with was the horse's and a cowboy hat. Now, he's President of the United States." Last night, my friends and I went to a ladies' night at a local nightclub. One of the girls wanted to show off, so she pulled out a $10 bill. When the male dancer came over, she licked it and stuck it right on his butt cheek. Not to be outdone, another friend whipped out a $20, called him back, licked it, and stuck it on the other cheek. Then my third friend pulled out a $50. By now, I'm getting nervous, but thankfully, she stuck it on the same cheek again. My relief didn't last long. The dancer suddenly raced over to me, and now all eyes were on me. He was daring me to top the $50. My brain was spinning. Then the woman in me took over. I pulled out my ATM card, swiped it down the crack, grabbed $80, and walked out. On a bus, a priest sat next to a drunk who was struggling to read a newspaper. Suddenly, with a slurred voice, the drunk asked the priest, "Do you know what arthritis is?" The parish priest soon thought of taking the opportunity to lecture the drunk and replied, "It's a disease caused by sinful and unruly life. Excess consumption of alcohol, drugs, marijuana, crack, and certainly lost women, prostitutes, promiscuity, binges, and other things I dare not say." The drunk widened his eyes, shut up, and continued reading the newspaper. A little later, the priest, thinking that he had been too hard on the drunk, tried to soften. "How long have you had arthritis?" "I don't have arthritis. It says here in the paper that the Pope has it." A man wakes up and notices the time, 7:07 a.m. He checks the date, July 7th, and thinks nothing of it at first. But then, stepping outside, he sees bus number 7 trundle by. Curious, he stops at a cafe. His coffee and pastry come to $7.77. He laughs. "Okay, universe, I see the pattern." Feeling adventurous, he leaves work early and heads to the racetrack. Looking at the schedule, the 7th race features horse number 7, Lucky Universe. Convinced today is his day, he bets everything he has. The race ends, and Lucky Universe comes in 7th. A little guy gets on a plane and sits next to the window. A few minutes later, a big, heavy, strong, mean-looking, hulking guy plops down in the seat next to him and immediately falls asleep. The little guy starts to feel a little airsick, but he's afraid to wake the big guy up to ask if he can go to the toilet. He knows he can't climb over him, and so the little guy is sitting there, looking at the big guy, trying to decide what to do. Suddenly, the plane hits an air pocket, and an uncontrollable wave of nausea passes through the little guy. He can't hold it in any longer, and he pukes all over the big guy's chest. About 5 minutes later, the big guy wakes up, looks down, and sees the vomit all over him. "So," says the little guy, "are you feeling better now?" A man traveling by plane was in urgent need of a restroom facility, but each time he tried, it was occupied. The flight attendant, aware of his predicament, suggested he use the attendant's ladies' room, but cautioned him not to press any of the buttons. The buttons were marked WW, WA, PP, and ATR. Making the mistake so many men make of not listening to a woman, he disregarded what she said when his curiosity got the best of him. He carefully pressed the first button marked WW, and immediately warm water sprayed all over his entire bottom. He thought, "Wow, the women really have it made." Still curious, he pressed the button marked WA, and a gentle breeze of warm air quickly dried his hindquarters. "This is amazing," he thought. "Men's rooms have nothing like this." He then pressed the button marked PP, which yielded a large powder puff that delicately applied a soft talc to his rear. Well, naturally, he couldn't resist the last button marked ATR, and then everything went black. When he woke up in the hospital, he panicked and buzzed for the nurse. When she appeared, he cried out, "What happened to me? The last thing I remember, I was in the ladies' room on the plane." The nurse replied, "Yes, I'm sure you were having a great time until you pressed the AIR button, which stands for Automatic Tampon Remover." An old man and his wife are in bed. After lying silently for a few minutes, the old man farts and says, "7 points." His wife rolls over and says, "What in the heck are you talking about?" The old man answers, "I'm playing fart football." A few minutes later, the wife farts and says, "Touchdown, tie score." After about 5 minutes, the old man farts again and says, "Touchdown, I'm winning 14-7. Furious about losing, the wife rips another fart and yells out, "The score is tied." The pressure is on, and the old man refuses to lose. He strains incredibly hard, but instead of farting, he accidentally poops the bed. The wife hears the noise and asks, "What in the world was that noise?" The old man replies, "That's the whistle for halftime. Switch sides." Two men are walking across a field when they come across a very large hole in the ground. So large that they can't see the bottom of this hole. "I wonder how deep it is," the first man says. The second man pulls out a coin and flips it into the hole. They wait and listen. 30 seconds pass and still not a sound. "Wow!" they both exclaim. "Let's try something else," says one man to the other. They spot a large rock nearby, and with a struggle, they get the rock to the hole. They roll it in, wait and listen. Still nothing. "My goodness, how deep this hole must be," says one man. "Let's try that huge log over there," says the other. Again, with a struggle, they haul this huge log to the hole and roll it in. As they wait and listen, and seemingly out of nowhere, a goat runs up and jumps in the hole. As they both look at each other in shock, they hear a tractor coming across the field. Shortly after, a farmer arrives and asks, "Either of you boys seen my goat?" "Yeah," they both exclaim. "One just came by and jumped in this hole." The farmer sits back and tells them, No, couldn't have been my goat. My goat was chained to a huge log." An old man and his wife lived deep in the hills and rarely saw many people. One day, a peddler came to sell his goods and asked the man if he or his wife wanted to buy something. "Well, my wife isn't home. She's gone down to the creek to wash clothes, but let me see what you got," said the man. The peddler showed him pots and pans, tools and gadgets, but the old man wasn't interested. The man spotted a mirror and said, "What is that?" Before the peddler could tell him it was a mirror, the old man picked it up and said, "My God, how did you get a picture of my pappy?" The old man was so happy that he traded his wife's best picture for it. The peddler left before the wife came back and spoiled his sale. The old man was worried that the wife would be mad at him for trading her best picture, so he hid it in the barn behind some junk boxes. He would go out to the barn 2 or 3 times a day to look at the picture, and eventually the wife got suspicious. One day she got fed up, and after he retired for the night, she went to the barn. She saw the mirror behind the boxes, picked it up, and said, So this is the hussy he's been fooling around with.
Little Johnny, come to my office immediately. Yes, sir. Little Johnny, I noticed you arguing with the customer who just left. I've told you before that the customer is always right. Do you understand? Yes, sir. The customer is always right. So, what were you arguing about with that customer? He said, my boss is stupid and an idiot, sir. That foolish man. What did you say to him? I told him he's right.
A blonde enters a restaurant and goes straight to the bulletin board in the back. On the board, she sees a piece of paper that reads, Ocean Cruise, only $10. She pulls the piece of paper from the board and goes to the address listed on the back of it. She enters the building and hands the paper to the secretary, who nods and asks the blonde if she has $10. The blonde takes $5 from her purse and gives it to the secretary. The secretary then looks over to a burly guy reading a newspaper and nods to him. He stands up, walks over to the blonde, and knocks her unconscious. When she wakes up, she finds that she's tied to a log and is floating down the river. She starts to think that maybe this wasn't such a good idea. All of a sudden, she sees one of her blonde friends tied to a log floating right next to her. So, do you think they're going to serve us some food on this trip? The blonde asks her friend. They didn't serve any last year, her blonde friend replies. Crazy thing happens today. I saw a homeless man and I asked him if I gave you $20, would you buy booze? He said no, he hadn't had a beer in years. Then I said, if I give you $20, will you buy hunting gear? He again said no, he got rid of his hunting gear 15 years ago. So then I said, I'll do you better than $20. I'll take you home and get you all cleaned up. My wife will cook a fantastic meal for you that I'll bring you back and still give you $20. He asked me, won't she get mad? I said it didn't matter. I just wanted her to see what happens to a man when he stops drinking and hunting.